I'm in sharing my screen.
Well, we want to welcome everybody to the March 6th Advisory Board for Teacher Education Licensure meeting. I know it's tough this time of year to get out of your classroom and out of your day jobs, and so it's so nice that everybody was able to be here today. We do appreciate the work from Joe's office to get us ready for this meeting. We will begin today like we usually do. We're going to go on and do introductions. I'm Nancy Bradley. I'm serve as citizen at large on the Advisory Board for Teacher Education Licensure, and I am at Virginia Tech.
Good morning, Peggy Schindler from Randolph College. I serve as the IHE private representative.
Dr. Bradley Gray, third grade teacher, Suffolk Public Schools. Good morning, Dr. Jessica Jones, agricultural education teacher at the Fayette Advisor, representing sixth grade technical education.
I'm Mary McIntyre. I am a reading specialist at Journey Middle School in Albemarle County.
I'm Eric Moffa. I'm an assistant professor of education at Washington Lee University, representing private higher ed.
I am Ann Hilton. I'm a member of the Board of Education and liaison here from Board of Ed. I teach education policy at George Mason.
Good morning, I'm Sarah Rose. I am a past president of Virginia PTA and I serve as the parent representative. Hi, good morning. I'm Shelby Elliott, admin coordinator for certification and compliance with Prince William County Public Schools.
Good morning, my name is Andy Cox. I'm the director of the Teacher Ed program at UVA-Wise, and I represent public higher ed.
Good morning, I'm Janine Conley. I teach fourth grade at King George County Schools. I represent Region 3 elementary teachers.
Good morning, I'm Steve Witt. I teach sixth grade English at Mecklenburg Middle School, representing Region 8 middle school teachers.
That's Dr. Joan Johnson, assistant superintendent of teacher ed and licensure.
Maggie Clemens, director of licensure and school leadership.
Donnell Torberg, director of teacher education.
Dan Lewis, director of academic programs and policy, Virginia Community College System.
Yes, no.
Hi there, I'm Liz Kingsley, Director of Government Relations for ETS.
Hello, I'm Dr. Cindy Pope. I am a reading assessment specialist with ETS.
Hello, Malik McKinley, Director of Educational Partnerships at ETS.
Good morning, Joel Andrews with Kennedy Consulting here on behalf of ETS.
Jerry DeLuca, Associate Vice President, State Partnerships with Evaluation Systems.
And we have Monica Osai from Chev with us today as well.
Once again, welcome to everybody. We appreciate your attendance today. as a part of the packet that was sent out to you via email, there was an agenda. We do need an motion to approve the agenda as presented. Please state your name and then.
Jessica Jones, so moved.
Me Conley, second.
Thank you. Also, we had one set of minutes and then a corrected set of minutes. And so from our February 6th meeting, are there any corrections to the minutes? Okay, we do need a motion to approve the minutes. So do we have a motion to approve the minutes?
Steve Whitten approved.
Okay, Steve Whitten,
Sarah for a second.
Sarah Gross, second. All right, is there anyone here in person to provide public comment? Do not see anybody here for public comment, so we will move on to our agenda. And the first thing we have is a presentation from Malik McKinley and his group from ETS, and so we would like to welcome them. Take the join us.
Not the presentation.
Thank you.
I don't feel like this is a Senate committee hearing. How big is this presentation?
Something's fine, but there's some static.
It's just taking a while to. See if I can get it quicker. It was quicker for me to do it this way. There we go. Now. I was trying to get it set up. Yeah.
Just put in the presentation.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for giving us an opportunity to speak this morning. Again, my name is Malik McKinley. I know we did introductions already, but just wanted to share again. Malik McKinley, I've been with ETS for about a decade now, 10 to 12 years now. Prior to that, was an English teacher in a couple different states, as well as a public school counselor. My colleagues Liz and Cynthia are going to take portions of this conversation. So just as a quick overview, we're going to just highlight for any new members that are part of ABTEL, real quick conversation around our background, our history, and praxis test development. And then we'll dive right into the conversation for today, which is from our perspective around reading for middle school and high school teachers. We'll talk about additional test options as well as state licensure approaches. Some of the last few items on screen, what we were asked to talk about from our perspective from the Department of Education, and then we will open up for questions. But please feel free at any moment if you have a question or something is of interest or no, please feel free to share that at any time. I'll ask Liz to come up first, and I'll be right back.
Hello, everybody. My name is Liz Kingley, Director of Government Relations, ETS. And one of the main reasons why I have been at ETS for the last 14 years is the nonprofit mission, which is to advance quality and equity for education for every all learners worldwide. And we do this through assessment, development, education research, policy studies, and more. And working with states like Virginia is one of the ways that we actually achieve that mission. ETS is one of the largest assessment companies in the world and was founded 75 years ago in Princeton, New Jersey, and provides tens of millions of tests in over 180 countries. One of the reasons that ETS is one of the most trusted assessment organizations is our dedication to conducting innovative education research. We have over 900 researchers who help cover ranges of topics from early childhood through the workforce. The College Board, who helped found ETS, has a long history with the Educational Testing Service, and we actually develop and administer the SAT and AP exams for the College Board. This is also ETS's 40th year being the lead contractor on the NAEP, the National Assessment of Educational Progress, or the nation's report card, for the U.S. Department of Education. In addition, we also do work for the PISA, which is for student skills, and PIAP, which is for adult skills, for the OECD. I'd also like to highlight that ETS develops and administers K-12 assessments, teacher licensure, higher education, and English language assessments across the world. These tests include the GRE for graduate business and law school admissions, as well as TOEFL and TOEIC, which are English language assessments. Malik and Cindy will go into more depth about the teacher licensure.
Before I ask Cindy to come up and speak directly to the topic for today, which is our reading assessment for middle and high school teachers, wanted to just make sure everybody in the room fully understands our licensure assessments, the practice program. For anyone that may be new, our licensure assessments are in two categories: practice basic skills, which is our practice core exam, which focuses on reading, writing, and mathematics. We also have a practice communication and literacy exam for reading and writing that is used in Massachusetts. And within the practice subject matter assessments, there are 90+ titles that we administer across 30-something states and territories across the world. So with those subject matter exams, they're kind of split in two categories. One would be specific subject matter. So you'll find a biology test or special education or teaching reading or elementary education. But then you also will find principles of learning and teaching assessments, which focus on teaching skills through a multiple choice and selected response exam format. On the other side of the aisle here with other programs, we do offer programs and solutions for administrators, for superintendents, as well as a series of performance assessments that focus on teachers, focus on teacher leaders, as well as school leaders. And we also serve the paraprofessional opportunity throughout the nation, and those who are seeking to become a paraprofessional or teacher aide in the classroom. We have a paraprofessional assessment that is used in a number of states as well. So as you keep that in mind, and as we talk about licensure assessment, I know the purpose of licensure continues to become a hot button topic, and we just want to emphasize from our perspective here that licensure tests are created to provide an assurance to departments of education or to agencies of education or any kind of licensing body across the nation that the candidate that enters into the profession working with students in the classroom have the requisite level of knowledge and skills in order to teach effectively on day one. So we're thinking about that candidate that will do no harm, that candidate that is just qualified, that candidate that has that minimum level baseline skill set in order to teach and know the content as they enter into the classroom. So for just a few minutes, I'm going to ask Cindy to come up and share with us specifics on the reading assessment under discussion today.
Hello, I'm Dr. Cindy Pope. I'm very happy to be here. I joined ETS in 2022, and I was very excited to join the team because of the research scientists that we have working for us, as well as the team of reading specialists that I am a part of. And I've come to the organization with more than 20 years of classroom experience, having been an elementary reading teacher, a middle school language arts teacher. I'd also been a K-12 reading specialist, an instructional coach. I've also been a language arts supervisor. And in addition to that, I had worked for the Graduate School of Education at Rutgers, where I taught undergraduate and graduate students coursework in teacher education and licensure programs for more than 10 years. I obtained my Doctor of Education with a literacy specialization from Rutgers, and I've additionally been trained in Horton Gillingham, Project Read, and the Wilson Foundations program. So I want to show you that every part of the teacher tests that we have for reading have the embodiment of educators at the heart of it. We have developed committees of teachers and teacher educators, which we construct a survey and we obtain feedback from our clients and from educators all across the country in elements of effective reading pedagogy. So at each stage of the game, we are employing the feedback of educators in the development of our tests for reading. The science of reading undergirds our tests. It is this body of research which looks at the brain connections in how reading processes. The scientific reading evidence is embodied in our items. The technology that is employed in everyday items also is included in each of the testing items. We employed the reading panel of the National Reading Panel of 2000 in our Big 5 assessments of including the phonics, phonemic awareness, vocabulary, also comprehension and fluency, which is at the heart of our tests. We also include the writing aspect. So we have 3 tests in our reading series, beginning with the elementary 5205, and I will heretofore call that the K6 test. We have the teaching reading K12, and again, that's the 5206, which I'm going to be speaking to you primarily about. And then we also have the reading specialist test of 5302. Among our reading series features, these Big 5 from the National Reading Panel are embodied in these items. We also have the International Literacy Association standards, as well as the International Dyslexia Association standards and writing in our testing item. Again, recommending that you review the materials that are included in your packets, but I also wanted you to note that when you look at the 5205 and the 5206, you'll see that we have created assessment throughout each of the categories. We remove that separate section. We've put all of our items into authentic context so that the test takers are taking tests with the scenarios, real life simulations that they might encounter. There is an increased focus on English learners and students with diverse needs, such as dyslexia. And you're going to see that there are specific items that address each of the learning differences. We want you to know that we also have accessibility of these tests and screen readers are available. So I would like to look specifically at the 5206 now. Again, that is the K-12 teaching reading test, which is a focus on the claim that candidates have the knowledge and the skills important for effectively teaching K-12 reading and writing. So again, as I've said, we're including the ILA standards, and the National Reading Panel, Big 5 components, the IBA knowledge and practice standards for teaching and reading, and the college and the career readiness standards as well. So let's look at the content categories, the test prep materials that are available, such as study companions and the interactive practice tests, and who's using these tests. All right, so let's look at these two tests in comparison. So for example, you'll see the 5206 is a K-12 test that we're going to be looking at primarily, but I also have the 5205, which is the K-6 test as well. Both of these tests have the same number of the multiple choice questions, and in this case, those are considered selective response. Each of these tests have 90 questions. Each of these tests also has pre-constructed response questions. And you'll see in the comparison of the two, the categories are both the same in terms of phonological and phonemic awareness and emergent literacy, phonics and decoding, fluency and vocabulary, comprehension of literary and informational text, and reading. So all those 5 categories comprise 75% of the testing score. You'll see though that, as you might imagine, there are a couple more test items related to phonics and decoding for the K-6 test, and 5 more for the K-12 tests that relate to comprehension of literary and informational text. Now I want you to take a look at section 6. Section 6 again is that 3-question area where 25% is devoted to students that are candidates here taking this test and providing a detailed constructed response. So what I have up here is an example of our study companion would look like. So this is a complimentary guide that is available for the candidates when they are taking the test. It gives them an idea of a simulation of the questions that they may be looking at. It also has discussion questions, so that these are supposed to be reflective for people to look at to say, do I have enough knowledge to be able to take this test? Can I answer these discussion questions? Can I answer the questions that are presented in front of me? It also tells them in a broader sense what these content topics are. So for example, the phonological and phonemic awareness section is 11%. Now that's taking into consideration the foundational skills. You can look a little closer about when I said to you the science of reading, we use the Scarborough rule. So the basis of word recognition that undergirds that will is clearing the foundational skills in this area. As well as phonics and decoding, representing 16%. And there is a focus on systematic instruction and looking specifically at the components of word recognition that comprises the importance to overall achieve greater reading comprehension. In the fluency and vocabulary section, it's devoted 20% up to the score, where vocabulary is important in this area, of course, but academic vocabulary is also a highlight, as well as the morphological analysis. So you'll see, again, the science of reading embedded here into this section. You'll also see in the comprehension of literary and informational text, there are only 23% of the score comes from these questions. This is where you're going to actually see the language comprehension portion of the Scarborough rule. Throughout these questions, you'll find technology integration being embedded into many of the items. Additionally, writing. Writing is the additional category representing 11%. And you have to take a look at when we have the writing that the contemporary research on writing instruction, including the simple view of reading and writing, and also the not so simple view of writing. You also see a focus on structured literacy. So here you see the strands woven into skilled reading of the Scarborough rule. You'll see that areas where reading phases are also embedded here into the test item. What I want you to also see is the categories have interwoven throughout them. Differentiation of instruction, knowing how to use data for decision-making for instructional choices. Understanding how to embed informational and formal methods of assessment, but particularly too is the diverse learners' needs and addressing them. And you'll see specific evidence of that in some of the test items. 25% of the test, again, is the assessment of the instructional decision-making of the constructed response items. These items will address elementary literacy learners, secondary literacy learners, whether middle school or high school, and diverse learners such as gifted English language learners, struggling readers and writers, and students with learning disabilities. Okay, let's look at a couple of the testing items. The items here are things that are available to testing candidates online to practice this complementary portion from the study companion. So you'll see that there are sample questions that are presented, but there are also rationales as to why the answer selection is the one to make, so that they have an understanding of the logic flow that's incorporated into the task. You'll see here in question 3, it looks at a teacher's aim to boost English language learners' knowledge of new vocabulary by teaching them how to look for cognates. And so an answer A for option for the question 3 is presented here. And the strategy refers to recognizing cognates that share similar meaning, spelling, or pronunciation with words from one language. The 5206 is an interactive practice test example here. So for test takers who are interested in additional practice, they are able to subscribe to getting an interactive practice test which simulates testing conditions, has a timer, it has score reporting, scores are broken down into categories and content, answers and rationale. So this would be an example. A 10th grade language arts teachers planning lessons to increase students' academic vocabulary through morphological analysis. Which of the following is the most appropriate first lesson for the teacher to implement? Okay, so they get to pause and ponder. Teaching explicitly how to deconstruct complex words into apposition groups. And I want you to note, so this is a 10th grade language arts teacher and looking at academic vocabulary and what is going to teach that learner to be able to apply academic vocabulary is a process of morphological analysis. Phonemic awareness. This is a question that a test taker may receive. When a syllable ends in a vowel, the vowel is a long vowel sound, as in great, idle. When a syllable ends in a consonant, the vowel is short, as in one, tackle. When a consonant lies between two vowels, provide the word after the first vowel, as in music. So a question like this is something that a testing candidate may encounter, and it would be something that they could potentially employ in their teaching. Phonics, the explicit phonics instruction, which phonics generalization would normally be taught first. Is it vowel digraphs, short vowels, consonant clusters, or consonant digraphs? And short vowels. And so I want to say that this is an example of how a planned program of instruction for language arts literacy is employed here in the structured literacy approach. This is a question that goes to decoding. A teacher is designing many lessons for students who would have a difficulty decoding unfamiliar multi-syllabic words that they frequently encounter while reading historical fiction texts. Which of the following actions will best accomplish the teacher's goal? What I want you to note here is that this is for the genre of historical fiction. So the answer here is instructing students to decode word parts, prefixes, groups, suffixes. So for our students to ultimately be able to understand content level instruction, they really need to know how to be able to understand the word and the vocabulary associated with this. And this is true for students in every range. A teacher wants to focus instruction on morphological analysis to develop gifted students, understanding vocabulary in class, which of the following activities will best meet the needs of students. Again, this is in the vocabulary category, but it addresses the needs of a gifted student. Asking students to match the column of group words. This is an example that is from the study companion on vocabulary fluency using a gradient to be able to select precise language. Comprehension of literature and informational text. All right, this is a little bit more lengthy of an example, but essentially what it is looking at is a middle school English language arts teacher and a social studies teacher working together to collaborate in putting together a project that is going to require students to do some type of research and is going to be of a historical nature so that they will have the ability to create a narrative written from the perspective of a historical figure, and they are to be following along using the historical era. Fostering growth in student disciplinary literacy is the answer, but I really would like you to understand from the example that there are many facets that this multiple choice question is presenting, so that when the student does answer, they're taking a lot of things into consideration. Writing. This is a middle school example, but will help middle school students understand the differences between narrative and expository genre, and it's providing features of text, such as chapter title. Constructive response items. Now, this is going to be where in the test companion, it says that the candidate should allow 10 minutes for these items. These are items that will be presented for the candidate to be able to provide a written response. So reading the question and they have the response to tasks. At high school, language arts teachers decided to further the students' language development of proficient readers by using authentic literacy materials, and the teachers need to include a technology component in their instruction. So they're being asked to be able to provide a recommendation of a literature piece that would be effective to recommend to the student, and again, include technology. So what's at play here is that the candidate has to express their knowledge of students, of using data to inform their instruction about their students, and to be able to also talk about text complexity and give a specific example of why they've chosen a piece of literature. And this would be helpful to advance the students' interest in reading. Another example, this is an example at an elementary level, but potentially other constructive response items may also entail delving into data to inform grouping decisions that will be presented, as well as time management, which is a scenario in which a teacher has a heterogeneously grouped students, and he is to make a decision about how he's going to take his 90 minutes of language arts and be able to group the students, knowing that a percentage are proficient, others have other needs, and how he's going to be able to structure time to be able to accommodate all the students in the two groups, to be able to teach them content area literacy of science by teaching them about birds. Okay. I'm going to shift here to how many people in states are using the 5206 now. Well, it's 14 states are represented. We have the test score or PET score that begins at 151 with Kentucky and continues to 159 with New Jersey. The mode, the average occurring score is 156. As I said earlier, every step of the way, we are engaging our educators in the process of test development. And so in our last multi-state standard setting panel, we had 17 members, including teachers, professionals that are professors, literacy specialists, and others that work in K-12 schools and colleges. For our K-12, we call it the National Advisory Committee members. We had 24 members, teachers, professors in K-12 school and colleges. And finally, in the actual test creation, we employ outside item writers from throughout the US, but we actually have item writers from the state of Virginia as well. So I thank you very much for the opportunity to meet with you today and to discuss our test. And I appreciate that Mr. Malik will be speaking with you next.
So we just wanted to pause there. I know that was a lot of information in a short period of time. Are there any questions about reading at all?
Just to summarize,
Yes.
so currently we have just to summarize, currently we have already adopted the K through 6 assessment that was referenced, as well as the reading specialist.
Yes, ma'am.
And the balance of her presentation was focused on the K through 12, which we do not have in this state, but all of the items and the related other state comparison was all for the K-12 assessment. Okay, just to summarize. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Would we
Yes.
be able to, we didn't get the 5205 layout. Can we get that emailed to us so we can compare side by side? I couldn't see it from the screen. So.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank
Absolutely.
you.
I'll send that.
55 what?
To Joan and Maggie.
5205.
Any other materials that you may have wanted to see today that you did not? Because I can certainly forward anything else to you.
Question, she mentioned also accommodations, just circling back a little bit to the accommodations. You mentioned, I guess, a screen reader. Are there other accommodations that you could share with us that would be available for any of the assessments that you've mentioned?
Right, so with the 90+ titles that we offer in the program, including our reading series, we have maybe 20 to 25 different accommodations.
Okay.
And that can range,
I don't have the list in my head, but
that can
it can
range
range from enhancing a screen to having a screen reader
or a
writer
for
or instructor response exam. A candidate can have
a separate room or additional time. A candidate can have additional breaks added in to their testing experience. So there's a number of ways that we can respond to any disability or any health related need.
So does the state have to choose that in advance, or that would be up to the individual just asking for certain needs?
That is up to the individual. As it relates to a disability or health related need, there's an application online. They complete that. And there is some supplemental material that needs to be associated with that application. We usually ask for candidates to submit that 6 to 8 weeks prior to testing, so that if there's a little back and forth in terms of anything missing, we can have that opportunity to have that conversation and then add that to
their testing experience before they enter into a physical testing center.
Last question, would you have the capacity to offer any other languages in the same version?
At this time, we do not have that capacity, but that is something that our research and assessment team have been thinking about over the last several years as we're expanding the program. But currently we only offer languages. We only offer English as the language for practice.
Thank you.
So one question I have is we already have adopted the 5205. Now we're looking at the 5206. How are these two tests, like, are states using them either or? Are they using both? Like, how are these two tests used differently in other states?
So similar to the conversation today, elementary, the teaching reading elementary is usually used in states for that K through 6 area. But reading has become more and more important, across the states, not only at the elementary level, when you're thinking about students needing to read by 3rd grade and that impacting the rest of their life. But it's also important at middle school and high school, which is why we initially developed the K through 12 exam and also regenerated it with the latest reading standards. So that's used more at throughout the depth of a student's career from elementary to middle, to high school.
Has any alignment been done between the regulations that govern our programs and what is expected to be known by students, especially I'm thinking especially like 6 to 12, because I look at some of what was presented, I see it in our elementary, but I do not see that as strongly in our 6 to 12. So are these aligned with the requirements of programs in the state of Virginia, or is that something that you see Jen shaking her head? And so that is part of my concern, because I know what we offer to our students, what, you know, how we're preparing them. And so, as I looked at this, it did cause me concern because that's not something that we had done with our, especially our
Secondary, right.
Yeah,
So we can certainly develop an alignment between our exams, so it can demonstrate where we are aligned between our exams and the middle and secondary areas. But you know, in terms of this exam, it certainly does go in depth in the area of reading, and that might go beyond what is currently required. But we were asked to present what we could provide at the middle and high school level, which is our teaching reading K-12 exam. But in terms of alignment at the elementary level, we walked through that alignment before the adoption of the teaching reading exam. So you'll see complete alignment, and we can certainly share that between our current teaching reading exam and standards here on elementary school.
I have a
So
question.
I spoke about SOLs, you heard it right.
Right.
It's not our regs, but just so you're here.
right.
Right.
Just to go back to the accommodations, are there accommodations available for English language learners?
Yes,
And
so
what documentation do they need?
yes, so for anyone that has for anyone whose first language is not English, there's a simple application that candidates have to fill out online. So it, you know, it asks for, you know, basic information about the individual student or individual candidate. They have to have a faculty representative or some type of advisor at their institution also verify that their first language is not English. We ask them to attach their business card just in case we need to connect with that faculty or that advisor at the student's institution, but it pretty much is provided within maybe 2 to 4 weeks before an exam. And that's one of the most widely used accommodations, if you want to consider it an accommodation, that we offer.
So does the state have to do anything, or again, is that just an individual?
So that's the individual.
Who knows?
It's a one-page application, and again, you know, they connect with their advisor. The advisor puts their business card in or information, shares it with us. If we need to get in contact, we will. If not, we'll move forward, and that will be added to the registration system so the candidate has that access on testing day, which provides, if I didn't share, additional time.
Okay, that's good. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
So I was looking at the overview of the K through 12, and it says that the test taker will be required to analyze and respond to situations involving both entire and individual grade levels from kindergarten through grade 6. But when you presented, you offered a question that related to high school. So I'm a little confused as far as, you know, when they're saying that in, you know, grade levels from kindergarten through grade 6, that doesn't really benefit the secondary. So I just want like more clarification for that. Which one are you looking at? Which number? I'm looking at the 5206. Okay, the one that you presented. And it's saying that the test taker will be required to analyze and respond to situations, and it says grade levels kindergarten through grade 6. But the test is K through 12.
And there are constructed response questions that respond to secondary, which could be middle school and it could be high school, as I showed you. But also in the selected response questions, there are also questions that do range from kindergarten through high school.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify. Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Oh, please.
Use my ignorance, but if I'm understanding correctly, this 5206 would be for the 5206 would be for reading specialists working in the upper grades.
So currently,
Just the teacher of English literature in high school would not be taking this test. It would be a reading specialist working at middle and high school.
so currently the teaching reading elementary is K through 6, and also special education. We have a reading specialist test specifically for reading specialists. This is in reference to middle and high school teachers of other subject areas, but that would be a question for the Department of Education now.
So, okay, so 5206 is not intended for reading specialists at the upper grade. It is intended for content. The subject, the biology teacher and the English literature.
That is
So
correct.
that's how it's being used in
In many states.
these other states.
So it's my understanding this is a relatively new assessment for ATS,
Yes, sir.
but it has already been adopted or in other states.
Yes, sir.
And just for clarity, it is being used by content area teachers in middle and high school, like as part of their licensing programs in those states.
In some states, yes. So what I could do is pull together a quick chart and be able to share that along with the other material that was asked for today, so you can see. Because I think we shared where the states are that are using this particular solution, but we didn't drill down to the specifics in terms of certification area and content area. So I can share that with you, but there are states that are using it in that way.
Thank you.
And this is maybe just clarification in what Ian has started there is that, so the 5205 and the 5206, what we currently do with teaching reading 5205, the 5206 includes what the 5205 has in it now, or it's entirely different.
There is some overlap, but I'll pivot to Cynthia to share a little bit more.
As you saw with the informational text, there were more items that were devoted to that in literature, less to the phonics and fluency. So there were a couple less for phonics and fluency, 5 more in the language and informational literature.
Could you hear?
Were you able to hear me?
I think I've got it. So in other words, the 5205 may be a bit more detailed and geared toward lower or the lower grades.
There are a couple more questions devoted to decoding and fluency.
Because what I'm trying to figure out is that as the presentation went on, is this going to be a potential replacement for 5205? But it sounds like that there's enough differences between the two that really the one is geared more toward elementary than it is for secondary.
But I would also say that the items will be geared to K through 6 in the 5205 versus the 5206, which would be a range from K to 12.
Okay. Is there any overlap from the 5038, which is the English content test for 612? Is there any overlap between the 5206 and the content English 5038?
Okay, so my familiarity is primarily with the reading series items, though I have to say that the reading series items are very reading focused. And so I can't speak of the other tests, but we could research that and provide an answer for you.
Okay, and then on that same thread, the 5714, the writing, and the 5724 reading, there is overlap with those to the 5206.
So that would be another question.
I can pull together, comparison document that can show or demonstrate the differences and similarities between both exams. I mean, anything that has English language arts or reading in it, it certainly is going to focus on some general concepts, but when we're talking about our English language arts assessments versus reading, obviously reading delves in much deeper into the content that was shared today. But I can certainly provide some information about the comparison between the two.
States that are using the 5714 and the 5724, what primarily are they using that? Is that for 612 English? Is that who's taking that test now?
What are the numbers you're referring to?
The 5724 writing and the 5714 reading.
So we have a core academic skills for educators exam, which focuses on reading, writing, and mathematics. And that is a basic skills test that allows for prep programs who are working with candidates as they enter into the program to demonstrate their basic knowledge as it relates to those three subject areas. And then we have English language arts exams for middle school and high school. I think the middle school test is 50-47, and then we have 2 high school or secondary exams in English language arts, one that has a constructive response and one that is simply just multiple choice and selected response. And that would be for grades 9 through 12.
So it sounds like the 57-14 and 57-24, the reading and writing, are most certainly incorporated in the 5206. And but maybe just a bit more in depth in those 2 areas. Is that about right?
So the reading exam that we currently offer, if you're referring to our core test, that's basic reading. It's not the teaching of reading, which is different than on our teaching reading or our teaching K-12 exam. One test focuses solely on how to teach reading as it relates to subject areas, and then the actual reading exam that I think you're referring to within our core exam is just about reading, simple reading proficiency, simple math proficiency, as well as writing. So both of those exams draw at 2 totally different constructs here.
So those exams are actually more closely aligned to what we require now as the Virginia Communications and Literacy Assessment. The reading, the 52-14, the 57-14, the 57-24. Those, okay, and are those offered as one test, 2 separate tests? Is it a series of tests? How are those offered?
So this particular exam, and I was referencing core earlier, but the communication and literacy tests with the reading and writing sections, they are offered in 2 separate subtests, which allows for a candidate to study for those individual exams a little easier as they're preparing.
What is the cost of those assessments?
They are, I believe, $90 a piece, but I can search for it real quickly and have that answer before we leave.
157.
Yes.
I had a question for the states that have adopted the 5205 and 5206. How are the K-12 special ed teachers tested? Do they automatically have to take the 5206 K-12 test, or if they are elementary special ed with K-12 endorsement, could they opt to take the 5205?
I think it depends on the state. I'd have to look by state policy to see what's particularly set up.
Okay, thank you.
But we are taking some notes to be able to share some additional information.
Jim, can you provide any more context for us as to what we're looking at and what the thoughts are about having, looking at these 2 or multiple different assessments, what your thoughts are on?
Just kind of gathering information. Just gathering information at this point. As you know, we were trying to consider options for 6 through 12 and thinking through our next steps with reading literacy, just again, exploring. And then considering if there were duplication across other assessments that are currently required, and considering if there were some options with ETS to support us, or consider, as he's mentioned, there's some other communication types of assessments they offer that are similar, as you pointed out, to BCLA. So just gathering some information from us, from a different vendor, so we could make some informed decisions.
Yeah, so just to clarify, and I mentioned earlier, the required skills for educators exam, 3 parts. We also have what is in your folder today, the communication literacy exam, which is what you were referring to earlier. And just a little background on that, Massachusetts over the last 10 years has looked at their teacher shortage crisis. especially over the last 3 years during the pandemic. And then they also are looking at their diversity epidemic in the state and trying to solve both of those problems at once. So they, about 2 years ago, started an alternative pilot program, which we worked with them to release this communication and literacy exam focusing on reading and writing. So it's been in the state for about 2 years, and they released a report, I believe, in the last 6 months that talked about the alternatives to their current communication and literacy exam. And our particular exam was one of the top choices for candidates that were not traditionally educated in the state. They've extended that pilot. It was a 3-year pilot. They extended the pilot for another 2 years beyond that. So it's going to be running the next 5 years. So that's just a little background on the creation of that particular test.
And Malik, I think you're right on. I think that seems to match up really well with our BCLA. These two that in what you just referred to, that's exactly what it sounds like to me. Yeah, thanks.
No problem. Any other questions? So I have a couple more slides here, but we kind of touched on all of them with all of the questions. I just wanted to share real quickly in terms of the supports that we have for the communication and literacy exam, we have a faculty crosswalk, which allows faculty to look at all of the topics, overarching topics and subtopics, and see where there's alignment within the coursework that a candidate is taking. We also have a candidate study plan, which allows a candidate to really focus in on how to study, when to study, what material to study, because we noticed in our surveys of students that more students, about a third of students, enter into the testing experience without any study at all. So we have this particular study plan. We also provide interactive practice tests for this exam. We have which are free of charge with registration. We also have a connection with Khan Academy, which is a comprehensive tool that allows for candidates to practice as well. That is also free. And then we also provide in-person candidate workshops where we'll sit down with candidates and talk to them about the best test taking strategies that we have to offer, study tips, diving into content, as well as working with faculty. Faculty sometimes don't have access to the data that they need, and they certainly don't have regular access to content. So we bring tests to faculty members at universities. We talk through those exams, and we also provide data that digs deeper than that overall pass rate that they might see on a yearly basis, so that they can know exactly where their students' strengths and areas of improvement are. So any other questions about communication and literacy?
So this test would have the same accommodations and type things that can be applied for other tests, like even like for our second language learners. And because I mean, that is a huge issue for us in the state of Virginia, is that we have students who can take a physics test and have absolutely no problem. But if they're a second language learner, they struggle with pieces, these types of pieces. So yeah.
Certainly in place across the board. Yes, ma'am.
I'm a middle school reading specialist, so this is like my thing and I'm geeking out. I'm a little concerned about the K-12 because this looks very, very much in the weeds, and in my experience in my building, I'm the only reading specialist, and you have to put tier 2 intervention into the language arts classrooms to be done by the language arts teachers. And universally, I hear from all of the language arts teachers, I don't know how to do tier 2. They aren't trained in that. They weren't taught that, and they're struggling with it. So in addition to doing tier 3, I'm having to also work as a literacy coach and train the teachers how to teach it is what they're missing. So when I see these questions, the teachers in my building, they would not pass that test.
We know that.
So I'm wondering from the people in the teacher education field, are they getting enough instruction on that level, reading instruction, if they're say going to be getting a 6-8 English language arts license? Because I don't think, at least the ones in my building haven't.
And this isn't just for language arts, this is our
Correct.
science teachers, our math
Correct.
teachers, our history teachers.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm a content area writing teacher, so for our middle and secondary folks, and currently the state regulations in Virginia do not have some of the concepts and details that are in the exam presented today. So there is a mismatch in my, and again, I haven't done any in-depth analysis, but yeah, so there would have to be either some change on the, what's happening in teacher education and the regulations and what content area teachers are doing, if we were to adopt a test for all middle and secondary.
We're just
I
exploring.
think there's some great things here that they should be.
But no, that's not what
But I
they're,
don't think that's an emphasis.
not at all. And we're just exploring, remember, easy, easy.
Just information.
That biology, all biology teachers in those states.
Not in our state.
All biology teachers and physics teachers, and chemistry teachers have to pass that test, that 5206. That's a pretty, that's a lot of, a lot of science.
Like more political awareness, like that's not.
I'll certainly dig a little deeper and provide a chart that shows.
Maybe they're using it as a specialist add-on. That's just a lot.
Yeah. And it wasn't that many states. You only had very few people. I don't know.
And states use tests
Differently, right, right.
So that's just something that I didn't share or we didn't share today, but we'll certainly add it in so that you can have a clear picture of
I
that.
mean, the document you have describes it as a beginning practice as a teaching, reading K-12 specialist. To me, that's a reading specialist. That's your job.
Yeah,
You
that-
have
yeah.
that. And I-
Yeah.
and you would.
Yes.
You would.
No, and just so you're aware, another piece you asked about the APP's perspective also, so no, it's not required right now in our regulations. And I know most of the content majors, they're already overwhelmed with having to do the content major plus the professional studies and student teaching. They're already over 120 credit hours. So most institutions are trying to find ways to get folks out with 120 credit hours. So they're already overwhelmed and really don't have capacity to go into that depth that's mentioned, the way things are now. Anyway.
And our elementary people, in order to gain this content, typically take 2, if not 3 literacy type courses to gain the knowledge needed to teach reading at that level. And that's not even a reading specialist. So, yeah.
And special ed.
Add in there too, is that I think most of us, and I can't speak for all teacher prep programs, but we understand that students are struggling to read as juniors and seniors. And so we incorporated that there's teaching reading for every single endorsement that we offer. So it doesn't make a difference if you're a biology teacher or a first grade teacher, you're going to get that experience of teaching reading so that I think our problem is that we have those students who are secondary kind of dismiss it as in, I won't have to worry about this because I'm a biology teacher. And then once they get into the classroom, they realize that, yeah, it was a wonderful skill and they were happy they took the classes.
Yes.
I appreciate the 5206 because it clearly concerns where we need to identify where things are and where things can go. And I think that by you presenting it in that nature, it allowed for a lot of good conversation and the clarity that we need to address issues both in education and in society as a whole. To Andy's point, everybody's got to be able to read and comprehend and understand. It's how we get to that level, regardless of what our content is. And I appreciate everything y'all put into it.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Oh, go ahead.
No, I know the department had a couple other conversation points. I know that, you may have wanted to at some point talk about what other states are doing in terms of licensure rules. I have some slides on that. I can certainly share that on another day. I know you all have other business to handle,
Can you
but
just
at
flip
any
through
time.
the slides? Can you just flip through the slides real quick?
Yes, absolutely. So just real quickly, and this is not a comprehensive list, but I just kind of cataloged a few states that have licensure tests in place, but are adding in various licensure approaches in order to handle this teacher shortage issue that we are facing. So as you can see, and I'll share the slides as well. There are some states that have a GPA and a test score calculator, so that if your GPA is really strong, like a 3.5, but your test score on the test for your academic area does not meet the recommendation that the state has assigned, then there's some flexibility there.
And which color is that one?
That's the green. I'm sorry, it's probably a little small.
Okay.
So states like Pennsylvania and New
Okay.
Jersey, and again, this is not a comprehensive list here. We have other states that are working around holistic scoring, which is the idea, like what we see in Montana, but which is the idea where there are three parts that are important to a candidate in the state. The GPA from the EPP, the use of an objective test measure, and also the clinical practice. And then there are points or percentages assigned to those three areas, so that if a candidate has really strong recommendations from their cooperating teacher, as well as their faculty advisor during the clinical experience, that can compensate for a lower test score or a GPA that doesn't meet that 3.0.
And is that managed through ETS?
No, this
Okay.
is just what states are doing.
Okay, thank you.
That would be a lot.
It's a lot for us too.
But so that's just an example of what Montana's doing. And then, in West Virginia, they're thinking about, various supports that they're putting in place as well. So their Board of Education this past January just passed some regulation around additional supports for praxis exams in state, so that they are at the state level providing test prep for candidates that are struggling in certain challenged or shortage areas. So that's just a quick dive into what other states are doing, and we can certainly have a more lengthy conversation, but I don't want to take up too much time this morning.
That was very helpful.
Yep, that's what I was gonna say.
because
Thank
that's
you.
something that we have been contemplating.
Mhm,
And so that's just a really, really helpful piece of information.
mhm.
So when I share these slides, there's a couple of other slides in there that kind of go into depth on these areas. So you can just take some time to kind of look through that if you want to find out what's going on in other states.
Any other questions for Malik and his team? Thank you so much for your presentation today. I'm glad to hear from you. We feel like you're such a regular now. But, we appreciate it, absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, let's see.
Next, we have our agenda items 1 through 4, and it is all Maggie.
It's all Maggie. Okay, Maggie, can I share my screen? All right. But I guess I'm giving it back to you, but just for purposes. All right. I did that. Do you need presentation or are you just gonna talk? Okay, all right, so I'll leave it.
I do not have a presentation. The next 4 items on the agenda are actually all regulatory items. The first 3 are opportunities for us to open up the regulations and to make some changes to allow greater flexibility for some of our teachers. The first one for your review is simply the notice of intended regulatory action to amend the regulation regarding the admin and supervision endorsement. This is something that we've heard from the field a lot from, but also from our IHEs. For those of you that are not familiar with licensure and how the admin and supervision endorsement works, the admin and supervision endorsement was intended to only be placed on the postgraduate professional license. And that's because the part of the postgraduate professional license ensures that someone has taken those 18 hours of professional studies because they have actually taught in a classroom. And then an additional part of that admin and supervision, in addition to the program that
they take one of the requirements that they have experience in an instructional position. What we're finding is that a lot of our school psychologists, school counselors, school social workers are interested in getting this admin and supervision endorsement added to their license. Unfortunately, the license that most of these folks have is a pupil personnel services license, which does not require the 18 hours of professional studies that our folks who have earned the PGP have done. And so they go to these programs at the universities, they go through the admin and supervision program, and then when they send it to us to get this endorsement, we have to send back, I'm sorry, you're not eligible for this endorsement because you haven't taken these 18 hours of professional studies in the VCLA yet. And they are very mad, which is understandable, right? And so what we're asking ABTEL to do is kind of start the process. Again, this is a start the process, beginning of the conversation. Regulatory action usually takes about 18 months. And so this, what you would be reviewing and recommending to the board is not an actual statement and a sample of what you want the regulation to say, but just simply a, hey, we think we need to address the regulation change. From the licensure office's standpoint, in the past, what has happened is that school divisions, a superintendent will send us a request to modify the regulations and ask us to waive 18 hours of professional studies and the VCLA in order to convert these PGP licenses or these PPS licenses to a PGP license. When I came on board about 3 years ago, I went through and reviewed that policy and had a little heartburn about it. And so I would suggest when we start getting into this process, again, this is just the notice that we're going to start something, but in future conversations, talk about what that's going to look like for our school social workers, our school psychologists, and our school counselors, so that they can go through these programs and have that endorsement on their license, because they are looking for those job opportunities in a building level, a central office level position. And the divisions are requiring that in particular endorsement, but let's do it without having to convert their license. Let's look at having the opportunity to add it to their PPS license instead. So before you today is simply a NORA to approve to send this to the board so that we can start the regulatory process to open up that admin and supervision endorsement regulation. Again, the regulatory process is about 18 months. So how this would work is we send the recommendation to the board to start the NORA. If all goes well, the board will also approve the NORA. Then it gets into the queue for proposed legislation and then final. And again, it takes about 18 months because it's got to go through all the steps. Once it goes through the board and it goes through the APA process with the original public comment period, it comes back to us so that we can determine what we want it to say. Then it goes back to the board for approval. Then it goes back to APA. Then it comes back to us one more time for final approval. Then it goes back to the board, and then it goes back to the governor, and then he'll sign it and send it into to effectuate it. So it's a long process, but the first step is to actually approve the NORA so that we can get started.
And it puts us on notice for you to communicate with your stakeholders also of what's happening and get feedback from them as we move to that second stage, when it will come back again, where we have an opportunity to craft some actual language and looking at the existing regulations and how we'd like to modify or amend the existing ed leadership or school administrator supervision pre-K through 12 endorsement.
And Maggie, each time it comes back to us, we have the ability to put some
Absolutely.
recommendations.
Absolutely. And it goes out for public comment as well. So they'll have opportunities for all of our stakeholders to weigh in. So as we open up regulations, I know that is a tricky situation, and there's 4 different items here that all involve amendments to our regulations. Are there implications for things that we may not be aware of if we open regulations and start to make changes? Always. I mean, honestly, there's always. Right now, what we're trying to address is just the opportunities for teachers to have and other building level administrators to have more opportunities, pathways to diversify their career a little bit.
These all have come to us via either stakeholder comment, have come to us and said, hey, wait a minute, this doesn't make any sense. Or it's come from our content specialist saying we can't continue in this capacity and having such a narrow scope on specific parts of the endorsements or that type of thing. So that's the only reason we've started this. And so, I mean, it's always, once we start looking at this, of course, somebody may pop up and say, hey, what about this? 2018 was the last time we looked at the regulations, and a lot's changed since 2018.
I mean, I have people come to me regularly asking about other areas. And I mean, I know we're always a little hesitant, like one that has come to me consistently over and over again is that we have for our music teachers, that they have to pick a path. They're either choral or they're instrumental, and then they all the way through, but then they all take the same licensure test.
Yep.
And so so I think as we're looking at things, I think there's some of these other areas, if we're going to be putting through regulatory changes, that we really need to consider. I mean, that has come from across the state.
I agree.
And we just prioritize. We just need to prioritize.
Yeah, we need to prioritize. Actually, I mean, I'm a partner for anybody who would like to change something like this. I think that the divisions know that. So a lot of times I'm getting feedback from divisions about what they need. If you're getting comments from the IHEs that say, hey, this doesn't make any sense, please let us know, because otherwise we wouldn't initialize it because we wouldn't necessarily know. So if you've got things that are coming to you as stakeholders, absolutely let us know, and we'll look to see if we can tweak it.
So for example, I've gotten that same question. I'm sure it was discussed last week, but that would be appropriate for a public comment.
Yep.
For example, that person could, or individuals could write and propose something and present that to this group as public comment. Next week, April is our last meeting for this semester, I call it. That public comment. Let us know. And then we just have to prioritize, right? We have limited capacity.
Malik, do we have two different music practices, or do you just have one? Put you on the spot.
Let me check this one.
That's a really good question. Because that might be something that, if it's a testing issue.
Right,
then,
if we don't have
what
another
are our
test.
options there? Do we want to change the coursework type of thing? We want to change the assessment. Again, that's something that the board would do, prescribed assessments. And for prescribed assessments, once the board approves it, that doesn't necessarily go through the whole rigmarole, because the assessments are something that the board approves and done.
Right.
But
that
it was,
makes sense.
but it would still come from this group.
But they still come, yes, the recommendations would still come from this group though.
Yeah, and literally, this is like one of those conversations that since our last meeting, I probably had four. I'm like, I just talked with somebody about that yesterday. And so I did say, make public comment.
Right.
I said, you don't have to attend. You could send it in to be read,
Mhm.
but it is the way to get that.
And we've had a lot of, a lot of feedback. So library media is one. Library media is one where we have 3 approved programs in Virginia. ETS does actually offer a praxis for that. But and I would say this even if they weren't in the room, the programs have been concerned that you can't actually test for something like library media. Like they feel like their programs are something that they need to actually be part of the program and have that education and that coursework for, that it's not something that you can just take the test and sign off on. Kind of like special education. ETS offers an assessment like that. Virginia doesn't.
When they do the motions and all that.
So there's some that we've already vetted that we've determined that we would even get the support to bring it to ABTEL. I can certainly bring it to ABTEL if you guys would like. But we just haven't been able to get the stakeholder support yet for some things. These are the ones that I felt like we had enough stakeholder support that we could get to you guys to start the regulatory process.
Thank you. And then I know we have 3 more items that are very
Yes.
similar. So
Let's pause and vote, right?
We do need to vote on individually, because the last one is one that supports legislation.
okay, we do not need to do a roll call, but just okay. So we're trying to think how to phrase this. So we need a motion to put forward the review of a proposed amendment to the licensure. No,
To approve the NORA.
okay, to approve the NORA.
You didn't put that in the title.
Yeah, you might have to put it into words, because this is new for her.
Yeah, so you're gonna make a recommendation to the board to approve the NORA to amend the regulations.
Okay, so we need a motion to approve the NORA to begin the process to amend the regulations. Do we have a
Peggy Schindler, so moved.
Jessica Jones, second.
thank you.
The second one is on special education and early childhood endorsement. This one, I actually did go ahead and put the language in there because this is something that we got from our early childhood special ed folks. Again, this is just the NORA, and it's something that we can vet through lots and lots of steps in the process. But if you're familiar, early childhood special ed is a very specific niche. Very hard to find folks for this endorsement area. And one of the things that we're hearing is that for some reason, the alternate route for this program says that somebody has to complete graduate semester hours in order to get the endorsement. And what we're finding is we don't have a lot of programs that offer graduate hours. Also, if somebody's double majoring, then they're not getting graduate hours, they're getting undergraduate hours. And so this is just going to start the process to strike the word graduate. We don't have any other language in any of the other content endorsements that specify that it has to be graduate language or graduate hours for those endorsements. And we're almost thinking that this could have been a technical problem when it went through to ABA because it is such an anomaly. But the regs were done back in 2015 and we're trying to sort through the board, the typed pages of the board documents to see if it actually was. But if it's not, I wanted to go ahead and start the NORA. If it's a technical amendment and it was an issue when we sent it over to APA, it's a quick and simple change. But if in fact it was something that was part of the legislation and it needed to be there, this is just going to start the process to again recommend to the board that we look at changing and striking the word graduate.
Yes, I read that. I thought,
Right?
yeah. Why would we say that? Yeah.
We thought it was an anomaly, so we're still trying to figure out where the disconnect was, but this is just to start it in case we can't find it.
Okay. Are there any questions about this item? All right, so we need the advisory board of teacher education and licensures to make a recommendation to the Board of Education to approve the notice of intended regulatory action, NORA, to amend the licensure regulations for school personnel. I knew I saw it somewhere, but it wasn't in, I was looking at anyhow. So do we have a motion?
I motion to review of NORA to amend licensure for this specific topic.
Thank you, Eric.
Shelby Elliott, second.
Okay, thank you.
All right, the third one is in regard,
Do we need to make a vote, a voice vote on these?
Say we do not.
Not a roll call, but a voice.
Yes,
can.
yeah,
I mean, just.
Yes. Yes.
You should.
So like an all in favor?
yes, no, yes.
Okay. All right, so do we back for the first one?
Yes.
Okay, so for item 1, all in favor, vote aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. All right. The
Unanimous.
second item, all those in favor, vote aye. Opposed? Motion carries. All right, on to item 3.
All right, item 3 has to deal with chemistry. And I'm thankful that this is just the starting off point, the NORA, because I need my chemistry folks here to explain this. What is going on with the chemistry endorsement is that folks are finding it harder and harder to find the coursework that specifically addresses organic chemistry, inorganic chemistry, and the other chemistry classes that come with it. In the licensure regulations, it actually spells out exactly what course you need to take. But unfortunately, some universities can't offer those courses because a national organization, the American Chemical Society, only approves undergraduate chemistry programs that have met certain criteria. So it limits the amount of programs that are, courses that some of our universities can offer, and therefore makes it a little bit more difficult for us to get chemistry majors. They, of course, can always pass the praxis, but we always want to encourage the coursework, right? So this is going to, we've talked to our chemistry folks, and this is going to, again, start the process to open up these regulations, and they'll be able to explain it more when it comes to actually creating the language. But the intent is to strike the word coursework and instead put in competencies, because there are lots of courses that cover those competencies, just like our IHEs kind of consolidate those into different classes. That's what some of these chemistry schools are doing for this. And so it makes more sense for us to say competencies in organic, inorganic, analytic, et cetera, chemistry, rather than separate courses in each one. So that's what this one is.
That one also makes a whole lot of sense. Really makes.
We're doing the best we can.
That's right. All right. Any questions for Maggie on item 3, review of the amendments to licensure regulations for, for the chemistry? Any questions about that? Any of our science folks want to weigh in?
And I will have them here for any time this comes up, the next 2 iterations of it.
Okay, so we once again want to make a recommendation to the Board of Education to approve the notice of intended regulatory action to amend the licensure regulations. Do we have a motion?
I guess the only thing is that that's full amounts.
That's correct. I think I don't have that item.
I did notice that.
Sorry,
this is item.
I don't have that.
Shouldn't it be item 3?
3,
But it's
and
still
item
says,
4 is school counselor.
So I don't have that.
we have 2 school counselors.
So the
We have
agenda
item
is
3
incorrect.
school counselors.
So the agenda is incorrect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Did you get all of the pieces?
Yeah, we have the pieces are.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we can edit the agenda and update the minutes and not worry about the PowerPoint.
Correct.
So we are now making motion, and I don't mind on the screen, so I, Eric, also propose that we review the NORA regulation for chemistry.
Second, Peggy Schindler.
Okay,
All those in favor, vote aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, so the agenda will be revised.
Yeah.
For, so 1 was admin and supervision, 2 is special education, early childhood, 3 is chemistry. 4 is not a NORA, 4 is actually, proposed amendments to the regulations to comport with legislation, and that's on the school council. That what everybody has.
Yes.
All right, so in the 2022 legislative session, there was legislation that actually fell into the SOQ that allows for school divisions to hire on a provisional license. Those folks who have a license issued by DHP, the Department of Health Professions, in either clinical counseling, clinical psychology, clinical social work, and they can get a provisional license from us. They get cited for coursework and for some practicums, and then they have those 3 years to actually finish out the extra coursework and experience. The idea here is folks who have those DHP licenses already possess the knowledge of those clinical staff, but they don't have it in a school setting. If you look at the program regulations, it's very specific. You have to have a master's in school counseling, not just counseling, but school counseling. Same goes for school social work, same goes for school psychology. So the SOQ language in the legislation, all we're doing is putting that into the licensure regulations. We worked very hard with the counseling office at DOE to ensure that we've got the semester hours and the extra experience covered that we think that they should have when they get issued that provisional license. That DHP license is just their golden ticket to get the provisional license in Virginia, but then for school. But then we actually cite them for additional coursework and experience so that they are getting all the competencies of an approved program under the school setting, but they didn't necessarily get their original training. But again, this is just comporting to the legislation that was introduced in 2022.
So do we need a motion to?
Yes, because this will have to go through, we'll have to take this to the board and it'll have to go through even though it's just comporting, it still has to go through the whole regulatory process.
Okay, so
Maggie, is that a PPS license, or is that ultimately it goes to
No, it is still a PPS license. Yes, school counselors, school psychologists, school social work, if they have not had those 18 hours of professional studies in the BCLA, they get PPS. Yes, sir.
Okay, so we need a motion to move this review forward. Do we have a motion? So move, Jessica.
Me Conley, second.
Okay, and then roll call vote.
Or,
not roll call,
sorry,
all those in favor, vote aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay.
I have a legislative report.
Yeah, we would love to hear
It's up
it.
here.
Is that
No,
okay?
is that okay?
Looking at my time, yes.
Okay, it's gonna take me just a few minutes. The last time we were here, I had just kind of briefly gone through some of the legislation that we were looking at. We didn't get a lot that affects licensure. Yeah, we kind of came away unscathed. The one thing that we did get, and I want a special shout out to Shelby Elliott and the team in Northern Virginia. We really wanted to get the legislation passed that allowed for our provisional licenses to be extended if they had only had one or any year they were employed, their evaluations, because currently the legislation says the superintendent can request an extension if they have a satisfactory performance evaluation for each year of the provisional license. Unfortunately, not everybody stays for 3 years during the provisional license. And so what we were finding is we were having some folks who could not get that extension because they left the profession for family, for sickness, whatever they were deployment, whatever they were doing. So this is the opportunity that I believe, because there's two versions of this right now. One of the versions says any year of the provisional period, and one of them says each year the person is employed. I don't know what's going to shake out. But either way, yay! This is going to affect about 40,000 provisionally licensed teachers, which is a huge win for Virginia. So thank you, Shelby, for taking that on for us. We appreciate that. The other one that will likely affect folks in divisions is the BRS return to work policy. That was one of Senator Lucas's, and that would allow for a 6-month break rather than 12-month break for retirees, which I think is also going to be very helpful for school divisions in hiring teachers. Let's see.
There's something with the bus drivers too.
Yeah, the bus drivers are also affected. Of course, the one with ABTEL, they're just adding more to your plate with teacher recruitment and retention efforts. That is check. That's one more thing to your to-do list. And then the last one I had on here was just the teacher re-engagement program was established. This one has gone through and it is set for the governor to sign by March 27th. This isn't a licensure issue per se, but it is an HR issue because it says that school divisions can hire part-time folks, which is great. We need all the folks we can get, but it does mandate that they give them benefits, health benefits, and that type of thing. Not all school divisions, if you're part-time, you don't do that. So while it's not technically a licensure issue, I did want to just bring it up for our HR folks, just to be aware that that's happening.
And it could help with the apprenticeship model.
It can help with the apprenticeship model. Other than that, we did not have anything come our way. We didn't get any extra money. Unfortunately, our national board certified teachers aren't getting extra money for preparation. Our English language learners, those ESL endorsements did not get that additional money to encourage them to stay in the profession. And so I do believe Joe got a little bit of money for apprentice, and we got some money for our licensure database, but other than that, we did. That was after all that, that's kind of what it boiled down to. Reconvene session has not been scheduled yet, and the bills that did pass and are waiting for governor's signature, I think his deadline is the 27th, like I said. So
Can you tell us a little more about the licensure database? I think that is definitely something that we would all be interested in.
I'm so excited about this. Thank you for asking. I wish I had my 2023 headband on. I'm so looking forward to this. It's been a long drawn out process. It's taken us 2 years to get to this point. So our licensure database that we've been on for years and years and years, we are actually changing vendors. The vendor is Ventia, and they have worked with other regulatory agencies in other states with their licensing databases. It's nice that they've worked with other regulatory agencies because we are a whole different model and breed of folks. So it's really nice. Their platform is going to allow us greater flexibility for the divisions to see into the database, for our colleges and universities to see into the database. It's going to allow for additional data for us to give to our divisions, finance reports, that type of thing. But it really is a platform that if anybody has been on our current online application system, It's a little archaic and clunky and it's hard to understand, but the interface on Ventia, much more user friendly. It's gonna have all of the requests that we can have right now. Our current database online only allows for initial licensure, renewal of the license, and duplicate license, whereas the new one is also gonna allow for endorsements, added degree. And it's still gonna be a hybrid of a individual, taking care of their own license, but it's gonna have the added support of divisions who have those folks employed, being able to request things on their behalf and that type of thing. But we're very, very excited. We have had 3 development calls. I have a call this afternoon, and they're actually going to show me platform this afternoon with all the branding. And she's like, "Can I get your logo so I can see so you can see what it looks like?" I said, "Yes, you can." So this afternoon we'll see a shell and what it's going to look like. So we're super excited about that. But that means for the next, I don't know, 4 or 5 months, I'll have about 3 meetings a week with those folks, just to make sure that everything is going according to the timeline. And the timeline is Christmas.
Merry Christmas to Maggie.
Yes.
Say New Year.
so,
Like, don't get
yeah.
excited. Just say New Year.
I'm trying not to get too excited.
Say New Year.
Those told me that
Yeah, don't do
He's
that.
not getting excited. But the timeline that was presented to us, while we have told FIDA that it's gonna take us 18 months to get this together, based on our progress right now, the T is pretty supportive and they think that we can get this out and go live probably about November-ish, and then we'll be completely, done by them not having to do any of our maintenance or anything by the end of the year. Another thing that I actually love about this company is that we are going to be training folks before it actually goes live. This with our current platform, I felt like we were kind of building it in the air while we were flying it. And so we were always having these trainings with our partners to make sure that they understood how to use the system, and then they couldn't get in there until it was actually live, and then we had some problems. This system actually allows for us to train divisions, IHEs in advance so that they can tell us what's working and what's not working for them, as well as the specialists on the back end of the system. We already have our training, our first training modules done for the admin side of it, but really looking forward to just kind of rolling this out in a thoughtful way so that the end product, when it goes live, everything goes live at once, everybody feels ready for the shift, and it'll be smooth transition. 2023.
We appreciate that. We really do. Very exciting.
So we know it's about the funding, right?
Right.
So it's about the funding. So these systems have existed, but our department didn't have funding for them. So the governor's approval of the additional money makes this possible for us.
Thank you so much for that. Our next piece is our liaison reports. Do we have a report from the Virginia Community College System?
No, we do not.
Okay, no report from there. State Council of Higher Education. No report there. Virginia Department of Education. I'm sure Joan has that.
Yes. A few notes. I guess probably I should say that you probably are aware that the state superintendent has resigned as of last week, if you were not aware of that. And Secretary Gadara has worked with our leadership team and communicated that she and her staff will be managing the day-to-day operations. Probably in our department, what will be most affected is the actual license. The name will no longer be effective. And I think her effective date is March 8th or 9th. So as you can imagine, quite a bit of transition for us. So wanted to acknowledge that and also thank and appreciate the work of our state superintendent, Jillian Balo, as she has transitioned. Again, I think March the 8th. So this week will be her last few days. Also, I wanted to, I guess, take a few minutes to recognize and highlight the officers. As we know, our terms for your positions end in June. And so I wanted to just take a minute and acknowledge and just talk through that process a little bit. And let's see if I can pull up my list. And so we usually have twice a year opportunities for nominations and for approval by the board. And so we have at least 2 new members coming before the board in March. All right, it's not working. Oh, I have to share my screen. Hold on. Yes, I don't need to share with you all. So on my end, I am note for sure that our chairperson, Dr. Bradley, her term will end in June, which means that we'll be electing a new chairperson for sure. Also, Dr. Peggy will also be ending her term in June of 23. We'll have a member at large that's vacant. Dr. Cox also will be ending his term in 23. This is your first, so you are eligible for a second term. Sarah Gross appears also, your term ends, first term in 23, but again, eligible for a second term. And Jessica Jones, second term ending in 23. And I think that's all in a quick scan of our roster. So again, just wanted to make you all aware. If I've missed anyone, let me know. I know. So we're going to be needing to think through a chair for sure. And probably April, if we have the new members. And then we'll be going through that nomination process probably over the summer so that new individuals would start with us in September. Keeping in mind, we need the quota of at least 10 or so members. And also, I believe our legislative representatives, some changes will be there as well. So we'll be working with the General Assembly on new recommendations for our legislative recommendations for ABTEL as well. So I wanted to bring your attention to that. And so
Can you do an election
For a chair
without,
without-
like, should not wait till the fall? Typically, we've done that in the fall, only because you've got people who come on in the summer. And so, yeah,
so because you're the last meeting.
right.
Sounds good. But just putting a bug there because we'll need to also have some people in mind that would be willing to take on that leadership role as well. I think that's all regarding members and process.
My first term was. Prior term, I think this is my first girl term as an independent.
Okay. Just, can you send me an email, please, just to remind me so we can check the system and I can update my records to make sure that that would be good news for us. Consistency, right? It's always good. Also, a couple of things, I guess, just going back to our discussions with assessments. I think some takeaways for the staff. We appreciate all of the accommodations, especially that we've learned about from both Pearson and ETS, and want to try to move forward with any accommodations that can be offered. We know we are waiting for a timeline from our friends and colleagues with Pearson of how fast we can adjust and how potentially we may be able to provide some additional accommodations beyond extra time. And so we'll follow up with you all once we have more information from Pearson around VCLA. And pretty clear that we know we must do something with VCLA. And so obviously we've been listening to the various presentations. And so when we have our breakout session, we'll take some more time to unpack our thoughts around next steps for VCLA, as well as making some recommendations for our elementary. I think those 2 areas are key areas. And we'll review the materials from ETS that will be sent to us, or the presentation. It also provided some other options for other states about kind of combinations, I call them, of options. We'll review that as well. So just putting a pin there, knowing that probably we'll be having some discussions and maybe bring some recommendations before the board in April for discussion at least, and then possibly by September be able to have some recommendations that will go forward. But again, giving us time to vet these things and to prepare for the discussion with our board of education. Let's see, what else? Yes.
Link just came over and told me they do have two.
Could you please use this?
Malik just came over and told me that they do have two tests. One is the music content test, which is 5113, that our students take right now that cover both endorsements. And they have a second test, I don't remember the number, but it's music instrument. So they do have two tests that we may want to look at later on.
But no music choral. So there's just a music instrumental and no specific test for music choral. So choral will still take.
It's the music content, 5113.
Right, which they take now. Right.
Instrumental, I didn't see it before.
No, we have a third content and instruction.
Okay. Okay.
And then the only thing next April, the April meeting, as you know, is our last for the semester. I have invited our assistant superintendent of policy to provide a final update on legislation. We should have the final governor's signatures on the bills by then. And so you'll have an opportunity to meet Melissa, who is new to the agency, but leading our policy department. So get familiar with another staff member there. And I think that's all I have at the moment that can share. I think we got a board member who wants to also make some comments.
Hello. And you're really, if I talk really close. Just a couple of things to add. First of all, just kudos to the staff, and we've got great civil servants in the Department of Education, and it's
a lot.
It's tough for them to have leadership transition at the top, and they're just doing a great job working on behalf of our students all across the Commonwealth and our educators all across the Commonwealth. So kudos to Joan and Maggie and all their colleagues who are plugging forward in the time of transition. So thank you.
Again.
Board of Ed did not meet since you all met last, so no new report from board. We are this next week, I guess, March 15th, starting. I may be wrong on the date, but doing our public hearings across the Commonwealth on history and civic standards. And then we are meeting the third week of March, but we won't be considering the history standards again. Then we'll be back in April, hopefully to finalize the history and civic standards based on what we get from the public. And then the only other thing I want to mention, so you're getting more legislative update next month. But the one other thing that did happen in the legislature, which we may have talked about before, but two other things. One is the Virginia Literacy Act has essentially been extended through middle school. And so it will make some difference. The middle school reading specialists there will be a requirement of science-based professional development for both the English language teachers and the reading specialists in differing degrees, basically, as I understand it, and principals and others too. The chemistry teachers won't be required to take literacy training, but
this year,
English language arts teachers will be getting at least phonemic awareness, etc., and the reading specialists much more proficiency. If at all, I guess there's a budgetary impact. Everybody, I think, probably knows that the budget is still out, but with major differences between the two versions. So the House took the governor's proposed bonuses for teachers and turned them into 2% raises on top of the 5% that was already there. The Senate did that and more. So there's basically a $700 million plus difference between the House and the Senate. And public education, probably the biggest difference between the two budgets. And all of that will somehow magically get worked out between now and June 30th, maybe.
Well, before that is crossed.
Yep. And again, I will, as I have, and thank you for bringing up the board agenda. There are some other things that probably will be on the board you may want to keep up with. So probably by next week, maybe it will be public. Next week.
The agenda for the board. Yeah, the board agenda is Tuesday, or 5 Wednesday.
So again, bringing that to your attention, there will be some other licensure types of issues, items that you may want to investigate. Staying up with, and thank you so much for reminding us of that. I think that's all for me. Thank you.
Anything else from the board that you wanted to bring up for discussion? Any announcements? Okay, so we're gonna go to maybe take a break, Jen, and then come back to our committee meetings.
Yeah, the close. I need a motion to.
Right, to close, but yeah, all right, so so do we have a motion to conclude this meeting of advisory board teacher education licensure? So we've got a motion second, so with that, we will convene and then we will return to our committee working groups. And